It's been raining today, so naturally that must mean a new piece of Astro equipment has arrived at my doorstep. Because in astrophotography, the weather forecast is not based on pressure systems, it's based on shipping notifications. This is the QHY Minicam 8 Mono. It's got a built-in filter wheel, LRGB and narrowband filters. This one has a QHY off-axis guider, and the seller also included a ZWO ASI220MM Mini guide camera. I paid $900 for the whole package, plus shipping and fees. New, based on current retail pricing, this tiny stack is about $1,457. So on paper, that sounds like a good deal. But that phrase, on paper, is where expensive sadness likes to live. This is used Astro equipment. And used Astro equipment are not just little boxes that are used to take space pictures. Used Astro equipment has USB ports, power ports, cooling systems, fans, sensor windows, filter wheels, drivers, adapters, desiccants, tiny screws, and enough failure points to make any beginner quietly start pricing exiting the hobby. I buy most of my Astro cameras used. If you've seen it on this channel, besides the SV Bony cameras, which I buy new, everything else that I've bought has been used. Most of the OTAs you see on this channel are also used. I'm not anti-used gear. I am probably the most pro-used gear person on YouTube. But I have had some issues before. I've almost been scammed trying to buy a used ZWO ASI220 while I was on vacation, which was apparently when my brain decided, you know what would improve this relaxing trip? How about some financial risk? So today is myth busting, but for used gear. Those myths are a good price is the same as a good deal, and used equipment is just inheriting someone else's mess. And I gotta say, neither of those is always true. A good price only becomes a good deal after the seller checks out, the gear checks out, and the payment method doesn't turn you into an unsecured loan officer for some stranger on the internet. And used equipment can be just as reliable as new. I am living proof of that. Possibly financially questionable proof, but still proof. So today I'm going to show you why this Minicam 8 deal looked promising, what still made me a little bit cautious, and then we're going to plug it into my PC and test the whole shebang. The camera, the cooler, the filter wheel, the guide camera, the OAG, all the ports. We'll take some frames with it, and we'll see if this whole little expensive Astro puck of magic is as good of a deal as it seemed to me when I sent the guy the money. So let's see what we see. So here is the package of what showed up. In the shipping box, I received a QHY Minicam 8 Mono, an ASI220mm Mini guide camera, and the QHY OAG specifically made for the Minicam 8. Give me a second, I want to take everything out of the boxes and just lay it out. I haven't opened any of this stuff quite yet. All right, okay. Here is the QHY Minicam 8. The important part for me is this isn't just a mono camera. It's a compact mono camera with a built-in electronic filter wheel. This camera has an IMX585 sensor, which seems really, really awesome from all the pictures I've seen other people take. Inside this unit are LRGB S2, H alpha, and O3 filters. So instead of a separate mono camera with a separate filter wheel and separate filters and adapters and all the other stuff, like say this setup right here. This is basically a tiny mono imaging train in one compact stack. In normal astrophotography terms, that's a lot of separate things to have to like space correctly and eventually blame for the tilt that you're going to see in your photos. Here, most of that's integrated, which is great because my favorite cable and adapter are the ones that I never had to use in the first place. Now, while I disassemble this, let me tell you about the seller for this one. I bought this on Cloudy Nights. Had the camera alone with the OAG listed at 800 bucks. The guide camera, this 220mm Mini, was not part of the package, but the seller said he could sell it for an additional, I think it was like 150 or 200 bucks. I didn't pay that. I paid $900 total, plus a little bit for shipping. Now, if you were to buy all these things brand new, comparable prices are about $1,457 before taxes and shipping. So that's like real savings. It's not life-changing money, but it's definitely enough money to buy a couple more adapters or a field flattener and then the spacers for those adapters and then that one weird M48 spacer that somehow costs the same as our weekly grocery bill. Anyways, you can get some good deals. Now, the reason this one specifically caught my attention was not just the price. It was the combination of the price, the detail that the seller put into the listing, and the honesty. He disclosed that he had done a modification. And looking at it, I can see it here. There's a 90-degree DC, 5.5 by 21 power adapter that was hot glued at the power connector. Now, honestly, normally when I see modified Astro gear, I don't immediately reach for my wallet. I reach for my breaking case of mods multimeter. But this one didn't scare me too much because it was hot glue. It wasn't epoxy. He didn't drill into a circuit board or, he didn't rewire this during a thunderstorm with some house wires. It's just hot glue. And it's one of those few modifications where I can look at it and think, I don't think this is going to be a problem. It's just going to be another Tuesday when it shows up. And if I hate it, I can undo hot glue. So I felt reasonably confident that I could undo it. And he told me there was no damage to the port underneath there. More importantly, the seller was upfront about this weird thing in the ad. And that matters to me because when they tell you the weird thing before you discover the weird thing, that's usually better than the camera arriving to you saying, and then saying to yourself, that's interesting. Why is there arts and crafts on the power port? I also verified in DMs back and forth with the seller that the original packaging was included. He didn't state that in the ad. Personally, I like seeing original packaging for some of this stuff. It's not proof that the camera works, but it's a signal. People who keep boxes for astronomy gear, they're often either quite careful or, more likely, they barely ever used it. Either way, I'm for it. I'm also personally guilty of keeping boxes for gear that I may never sell because apparently part of my retirement plan is to make a cardboard condo on the beach. So this deal had three things that I liked. It had a good price, it had a pretty detailed listing, and it had a disclosed flaw that didn't make it safe automatically, but it does make it worth me investigating. So taking this cover off, the filters look honestly dirty. I am kind of surprised that someone would send a piece of Astro equipment looking like that. That's not the best. But nothing's chipped. It's just like surface dust and schmutz. I can clean that. That shouldn't be too bad. Yeah, it's just dust. Before we test this camera though, let me be clear about the point of this video. It's not really going to be a Minicam 8 review. You're going to see this camera in all sorts of videos coming up in the future. But also, this video is not financial advice. It's not a guarantee. I am not specifically advising you to go buy anything from any specific marketplace. No marketplace is perfectly safe. No payment method will fix bad judgment completely. And no checklist can make strangers on the internet stop being strangers on the internet. This is just a system that I use to reduce my own risk before I send money, especially for expensive used Astro gear. I do apply this to most of my other hobbies too. The first question I ask myself is not, is this thing cheap? I ask, what evidence do I have that sending money for this is a good idea? Because cheap gear can still be a terrible deal, and slightly expensive but still discounted gear can still be worth it if the seller gives you strong proof, clean communication, and a safe transaction. For used Astro cameras, I usually want three things. I want seller proof about who they are, gear proof about what they're selling me, and I usually want payment protection. If one of those things is missing, I slow down. If two are missing, I walk away. If all three are missing, congratulations, you're not buying a camera. You're probably funding someone's crypto scam. So now I'm gonna attach the OAG. It's got this like funky retaining ring. While I do that, let me tell you about where I buy my used Astro gear. My favorite place to buy used Astro gear, if I can, is from members of my local astronomy club. Local pickup is hard to beat. You can see them in person, you probably know them, you can see the gear, and you can ask questions. If you haven't joined your local astronomy club, go do that now. If something seems weird, you can always walk away. You can leave with your money still in your wallet. Next favorite for me is astronomy-specific communities like Cloudy Nights. I bought a lot of stuff on Cloudy Nights. Or some of the dedicated Astro, like other Astro forums. Not because they're magically scam-proof. Actually, the one time I got really close to being scammed for a lot of money was a Cloudy Nights ad. They're not scam-proof. But account history matters. You want a seller that potentially has a lot of posts, maybe some prior sales, some feedback from those sales, and recent activity in the discussion groups. That gives me more to evaluate than some brand new account with one listing and the communication style of a hostage note. Facebook astronomy groups can also be good. There's like a ton of used buy-sell trade Astro groups on Facebook and on Discord. But I usually vet a lot harder there. Facebook Marketplace can be useful, but I don't ever consider things from Marketplace unless I can see them in person. On Facebook Marketplace, I don't accept someone shipping me something. I'm sure that good deals can be had there, but for me, it's a no-go. I got to meet in person. I also really like eBay because the buyer protection there is pretty strong. But, you know, the listing still has to make sense. If you get a random DM from someone with some amazing deal, that's very low trust. If someone asks you to use PayPal friends and family and they're a complete stranger to you, just say no. Because that's not a payment method. That's just inviting a stranger to reorganize your money into their wallet. Now, before I get obsessed with the gear, like if I see an ad that looks interesting, I look at the seller. How old is their account? Do they have any prior sales? Do they have feedback? Are they active in any of the community chats? Can they answer just normal ownership questions? Are they rushing you to send them money? Have they used any stock photos? Does the payment name match the seller identity at least a little bit? And for bigger purchases, are they willing to send me a fresh photo? That last one is probably what saved me. As a seller that actually owns the camera and has it, can usually take one more photo for that annoying buyer, but a scammer cannot. The timestamp photo doesn't need to be beautiful. I'm not asking for, you know, a Rembrandt. I just want, if possible, again, for high-ticket items, the camera and maybe a post-it note next to it with the seller's name and, you know, today's date in the same photo. If they get weirdly offended by that request, good. Because now I know I'm not having to buy a camera and I learned something before I sent the money. For a cooled Astro camera, hopefully they also have those ugly practical shots. We don't need glamour shots. I want to see The sensor window, I want to see the USB port, I want to see the power port, the threads on the front, any adapters that it comes with, the cables, included accessories. If there is an OAG, I'd like to see the prism and the guide camera like connection area up here. If there's a filter wheel, I want to know what filters are installed and if the wheel works. Ideally, again, for the bigger purchases, I would want some software proof too. A screenshot of the camera connected to SharpCap with the cooler on is honestly more than enough. Now, if I'm spending big bucks, like full frame big bucks, I probably will also ask for a fresh dark frame. A dark frame is one of the least romantic images in astrophotography. It's supposed to just be black. It's the photographic equivalent of staring into the abyss. But it can tell you a lot. It can tell you, is there any weird banding? Is there any download issues? How many hot pixels are there? Is there any cooling problems? You can even see any sort of electronic noise. A fresh dark frame won't catch everything, but it's a lot better than, trust me, bro, it worked the last time I used it. The last time I used it can mean yesterday. It can also mean during the Obama administration. Thanks, Obama. Here are some of the actual questions that I like to ask if the listing doesn't answer them already. Read the listing thoroughly. It can be annoying to get asked questions that you've already answered in the listing. Why are you selling this piece of equipment? Are you the original owner of this piece of equipment? Has it ever been opened or modified? For cameras that are cooled, does it ever get any frost? Is there any oil or film on the sensor window? Are there any scratches, any tilt issues you ever noticed? Have you ever had any problems getting the cooler to hit its target temperature? Does the USB connection stay stable? Does the fan make any weird noises? Any stripped threads on any of the little screws? Hey, what software did you use it with? Are you including all the caps, adapters, cables, and accessories? And if you don't mind, can you send me a photo of it that you don't already have on the website? And again, if it's a big buy, can you send me a fresh dark frame? And I try and pay attention not just to what they answer, but to the way they answer. A real owner usually has normal ownership details. They might say things like, hey, I use this with Nina. I ran it at -10 all the time. I primarily use DH alpha filter because of light pollution. Hey, the OAG spacing can be kind of tight when you don't have a ton of spacing. The power connector annoyed me, so I used this adapter. I'll throw it in the sale. If they sound like someone who actually used the telescope gear, that's a good sign. Scammers tend to be very, very vague. They'll say things like, it works great, it's in excellent condition, I have so many buyers waiting, you got to send me payment right now. They're trying to pressure you. That's not a seller, that's just a pop-up ad with a heartbeat. So let's talk about why this one made sense for me. First, the price was good, but not cartoonishly good. To me, that's a green flag. A discount is normal in this hobby, but a steal is suspicious. Second, the ad was pretty specific. It said exactly, what filter set was in here. It said exactly, what the OAG was. There's only one. It disclosed this weird hot glue adapter, told me that the filters were installed. He even described the filter order. And that's more believable than a listing that just says, camera, works, take space pictures, send money now. Third, the modification, in my opinion, had a logical effect on the price. This ad for this camera had been up for over 20 days on cloudy nights, and that means that people just aren't biting. This guy's probably looking to get rid of it. Comparable sales were already a little bit higher, so this thing had already been discounted compared to other used versions of the exact same model. And I think the hot glue probably scared a lot of people away, which is fair. If you look at this and immediately pass, that's fine. But for me, it was a known compromise at the right price. And that's what I'm looking for most of the time in my used gear. I'm not the kind of guy that needs perfect. I just need to know exactly what I'm getting. I'd rather evaluate a disclosed hot glue strain relief situation than discover an undisclosed damaged power connector after the box arrived to me. The disclosure gave me something to judge, and it made me, think this guy's pretty upfront. And that's the whole theme here. I'm not trying to eliminate risk. You get risk even buying new stuff. I'm trying to expose any risk before I send any money. And since we're talking about money, here are the general rules I stick to with payment. A deal is not a deal if the payment method removes every way for you to recover your money. For strangers that I don't know, I never wire transfer. I never use crypto. I never use gift cards. And don't let them pressure you. Never let urgency replace proof. I avoid PayPal friends and family unless I genuinely know the person and accept the risk. Friends and family is for friends and family. There is no buyer protection if you select that option in PayPal. It's not meant for a man named Definitely Real Telescope Seller 2 who joined Facebook 2 days ago and has one friend. I prefer protected payment methods. I prefer platform native checkout when the platform's buyer protection is part of the value, like on eBay. I will always pay extra if I need to for tracked and insured shipping. I like having the condition and included accessories written down somewhere, even if it's just in a message or as long as it's in the ad, I'll take a screenshot of the ad. And I'm not doing this because I'm trying to be difficult. I'm doing this because when something goes wrong, vague agreements become nebulous. And the only nebulous that I want is the gas around Orion. Now comes the part that turns this from shopping advice into a Deep Sky Lab episode. We're going to test this piece of equipment. I'm going to assume nothing. The box arrived. That was step one. Step two is proving this is actually a working imaging system. So tonight's acceptance test is going to be, first was the physical inspection, camera body, power connector. Actually, let's see how those things work. Yeah, the power connector goes in fine. And I can see what he was getting at with this modification. I don't know if I would have done it, but it's fine. I don't think I'll remove it. Let's see the USB port. Here, you can hear this. That sounds pretty good. A nice click. The threads on everything look okay. There's a couple scuffs on the outside of this that I didn't really notice in the photos and I'm not super in love with. And I don't know if you've seen, I've been trying to mess with this. It's got I don't know, like a 16 millimeter spacer on the front. What is this? Yeah, it's like 16.5 millimeter spacer right here in the front. And I cannot seem to get it off of here. If you guys have any tips, let me know. I'm going to try a couple things later. You can tell, I think the guy tried taking it off and couldn't get it off. That's not great, but I think that makes this 55 millimeters, which is fine. The telescope I'm going to test it out on, which is the SV Bony SV555. This one needs 55 millimeters anyway. And then the ZWO guide camera that it comes with, I don't think you need all of these spacers. We're going to attach that as well. We're going to make sure that the filter wheel is recognized. We'll do a cooler test. I want to set a reasonable temperature in like SharpCap and watch the cooler temperature ramp down and the power ramp up. I want to see the actual temperature move, and I want to make sure the fan sounds normal. I'm also going to rotate through every filter position. I'm going to just hook this up to my SV Bony SV241 non-pro power box because I don't need any of those crazy pro features. So let's just get this thing plugged in. And I'm going to probably have to download drivers because I don't think I have them installed on this computer. Okay, we've got SharpCap updated. I downloaded and updated the drivers from QHY. I have everything connected through my SV Bony hub to the thing. Let's see if the SharpCap sees the camera. Okay. So a couple things when you're buying used gear. Whenever something goes wrong, you're a lot more likely to blame the gear because you're like, oh, this is used, it must be broken. I, on this computer, didn't have the drivers installed, so when I downloaded and installed them, I didn't restart my computer after I installed them. So I'm going to do that right now, and then I'm going to try it again. I thought it was weird that like it didn't recognize them through the hub, and I was like, oh, maybe my hub's acting weird, the SV Bony SV241. But I don't think that's the case. I think it's just that I didn't restart the computer. Let's launch SharpCap again, and now that it's restarted, and see Heck yeah, here's the QHY Minicam 8M. I can see it. That's a good start. Let's see if it connects. Opening camera. Filter wheel connected. Okay. Here's the whole control panel. Okay, I'm going to start with thermal controls. And we're going to let that to auto. Let's set the target temperature to -10. Ooh, there it goes. It's doing something. It's cooling. You can see the temperature right here. It's dropping. It's at 2 Celsius, 0.4 Celsius. Okay, that's good. The cooler is working. Let's see if we can get the filter wheel to move. Oh, you know what? It's on the dark frame right now. Haha. Okay, so let's see. Let's go to filter 2. I can hear the filter wheel move. Okay. That looks like something different. That's good. Let's turn the gain down a little bit. Okay. Again, it's wildly out of focus. But we can see something. That's always a good start. Let's see if we move the filter. Does that look slightly different? Yeah, that looks slightly different. Okay. I mean, this is working. The temperature's holding at -10. The cooler's at 32°C. So I set a reasonable target. I don't really need to torture test this immediately. I just want to know that the tech has responded, the temperature moves in the right direction, and the cooler power is behaving normally. Cooling is one of the reasons that you buy one of these dedicated Astro cameras in the first place. It lowers the thermal noise and makes calibration a lot more repeatable. So if the cooler doesn't work, this stops being a bargain and becomes a very fancy room temperature webcam, essentially. So now I'm going to capture some dark frames. This is a pretty boring part, which means it's important, as we've learned. The frames are taken with the cap on, and they show the camera's readout behavior. These dark exposures are longer exposures with the cap on. They should show if there's any weird thermal signal, hot pixels, amp glow, banding, or weird electronic behavior. This sensor should not have any of that. Although, to be honest, for a used camera, I'm not expecting perfection necessarily. Sensors have hot pixels, that's normal. But what I'm looking for is anything obvious and ugly. Any strange banding, or if it fails to like download these images, like you can see down here, there's this how many frames have you dropped. So I've shot the darks now, this is good. They look good. And this is also sort of a stability test. Used camera problems aren't always instant. Sometimes everything will connect, and then 5 minutes later the USB starts giving up to go live on a farm upstate. But looking at these darks they've downloaded through here, they're 5-second exposures. There's no obvious disaster. I'm waiting to see a couple of them come through, and so far this looks like a working camera. The seller's proof got me comfortable enough to buy it, and this test here gets me comfortable enough to keep it. Now I'm going to test the ASI220MM Mini guide camera. Okay, so we've got ASI cap open, and I can see the ASI220MM Mini. I can, oh wow, it just connected to it already. That's awesome. I can, yeah, grab files off of it. It's, it's there. Okay. Okay, so the software sees it. That's good. These are like short exposures. They're 10 milliseconds. Here, let's bump that up a little bit. That looks good. I can change the exposure time. It's responding in kind. I can change the gain. I can see it responding to that as well. No obvious failure. Obviously, indoors, I'm not proving guide performance. I'm not guiding on a star or measuring RMS. I'm not proving that the OAG prism position is perfect in the setup. Tonight I'm proving that the guide camera works. It connects to my computer. It downloads frames. It's physically stable, part of the imaging train. Like there's no weird wobbles or jiggles. Like it's nice and firm. The sky test will come later, assuming the weather ever stops behaving like I just bought a brand new mount or something. So here's the used camera acceptance test for this package. Let me turn this fan off. There we go. Both cameras connect to software. Pass. The cooler reaches target temperature and behaves normally. Pass. The fan sounds normal. It's a little loud, but that's fine. Pass. The filter wheel rotates through all of its positions multiple times, pass. Bias frames captured, pass. Dark frames captured, pass. The ZWO ASI220MM Mini connects to the computer, pass. Guide camera downloads frames, pass. OAG looks physically intact, sort of pass. I can't seem to get that 16.5mm extension off, but I'll keep trying that later. There's no obvious sensor window damage, so pass there. The ports and threads on the device all look usable, pass. The accessories and the packaging match what I expected, so pass on that too. Used gear doesn't have to be flawless, but the surprises should be small, like a couple extra nicks and that spacer that won't come off. But if the surprise is there's hot glue where the seller said there was hot glue, that's fine. If your surprise is the camera is actually just a few small rocks in a shoebox, that's less fine. Now that brings me to that ZWO 6200 story. We were on vacation up in like Bryce Canyon up in Utah, which is already a bad time to make expensive decisions because your brain is relaxed. You know, you're 3 Mai Tais into a memorable evening. You know, maybe you're near the ocean. I was in the middle of a beautiful dark sky site. And I was checking my phone. I was checking Cloudy Night stuff for some reason. I think I was looking up like backspacing settings. And suddenly a used full frame Astro camera appeared at a price that made my common sense leave the room. The listing looked really tempting, like really tempting. The kind of tempting where I started doing math in my head that I had no business doing. And I was like, well, I don't need another camera, but if I sell one of these and move these things around and, you know, maybe start, you know, buy a couple less Starbucks, I could probably make this work. But then the red flags started stacking up. The urgency from the seller was high and not like, you know, I'm really looking to move this today and I have to ship it sometime this weekend. But it was just like, there was the 3 pictures that he had in the ad, and then I reached out and was like, hey, is this still available? And he's like, yeah, but I've got 3 other people, but if you want, I'll sell it to you first. And I was like, oh, okay, I don't particularly like that. And so I started asking a couple more questions. The proof was too thin. I asked him for another picture because the pictures that he showed, it looked like 2 different cameras. Like, I don't know, ZWO gear like this has a very specific type of anodization to it. And you can tell when it starts fading, it gets sort of pink. And in one of the pictures in his ad, the whole camera looked pink. And then in the other picture, it looked like brand new bright red. And as I started looking closer, I was like, okay, that looks weird. So I asked him for like one more picture of, I think I said, hey, can you give me a picture of like the threads on the camera, like attachment side? You know, I made up some excuse about wanting to like check the threads, and he sent me a picture, but that picture was of an APS-C of an APS-C. So it was like a 2600 that he sent me. I think he mistyped Googling. Instead of 6200, he typed in 2600, or Google just showed him that. And that's when I stopped treating it like a deal and started treating it like a test. Could the seller prove they had it? I don't think so. Could they answer any ownership questions? No. Could they provide fresh proof? No. And he was asking for like a Venmo or something, or not Venmo, Zelle, which has no payment protection. Once the answers started looking like no on all of these things, I walked away, which was hard because walking away from a fake bargain still feels like you lost out on the bargain, but you didn't lose anything. You kept your money. And that's not as exciting as getting a full frame mono camera, but it is much better than buying an imaginary one. So if you have used gear and you're looking to sell it, sellers also need protection. You guys, we all get scammed too sometimes when we're selling because it goes both ways. There are scam buyers. So if you're selling used Astro gear, here's some things that I try to stick to. First, document the condition of the thing before you ship. Take photos of every side, take photos of the sensor window, the serial number if appropriate, any accessory, the packaging, And if you can, take a short video showing the camera connected, cooling, and downloading a frame. That protects the buyer, but it also protects you, because if something happens in transit and you need to claim insurance, you have to show that the thing was working sometimes. Second, be honest about any flaws. If there's a scratch on the outside of the camera, just say so. If there's hot glue, just say so. If you're missing one of the adapters, you can just say so. If the fan's a little noisy, tell the person about it. The buyer may still buy it, but hidden flaws become disputes through the transaction network. Disclosed flaws become price negotiation at worst. And that's a pretty critical difference. Third, use an invoice or like at least a written message that clearly lists what you're sending them. Hey, this is the camera, the off-axis guider, the guide camera, the filters. Here's the adapters and the cables and the boxes. Any caps and things like that. This one came with the power supply as well. I'm never going to use that. But whatever is part of the deal, write it down. Fourth, always ship with tracking and insurance. I can't tell you how many times insurance on packages has saved me. My C11 arrived damaged when I bought it. It was C11 Edge HD. I got it from some guy in Colorado. He took pictures of it before he packed it up. He sent it to me, and it came with a massive dent. Insurance covered it. It went to Celestron. You know, they worked on it, and insurance paid for the full repair. And along those lines, if you're selling, pack the thing like the carrier is going to punt it into the loading dock of the shipping company, because they might. Use original foam if you have it. The people who made these things originally knew that they had to get shipped. So if you still have that foam, use it. Double box it if you need to. If you're shipping things like cameras, make sure to protect the sensor side. Don't let adapters rattle around loose. Loose adapters in a camera box are just tiny aluminum hammers. Fifth, only ship to the verified address connected to the protected payment method when possible. If you ship to a different address, and the buyer says, "Hey, I never got it. It never got to my address," you know, you have to be able to prove that you sent it to the address attached to the payment. Six, be cautious with buyers who want weird shipping changes after payment. Seven, don't refund outside the platform if the platform is handling the transaction like on eBay. Keep the paper trail all in one place on one platform. 8, keep your shipping receipts, photos, and messages until the buyer confirms everything's okay. And 9th, act like the kind of seller you would want to buy from. Put clear photos, write a clear description. Don't pressure people into paying fast. Don't, provide them one-word answers. Let them know about any honest flaws. Use good packaging. That's how the used Astro community stays alive. Because if we ruin the used market, we all have to buy everything new. And all of our used gear will become worthless because nobody's going to trust each other enough to buy it. And personally, I can't afford to buy new gear all the time. Did I get burned on my used Minicam 8? Based on tonight's test, I'd say no, this QHY Minicam 8 package appears to be working. The camera connects, the cooler works, the filter wheels, and the dark frames look normal enough for my initial test. This 220mm Mini connects and downloads frames. The OAG looks intact. The accessories and packaging are all here, just like the seller said. And this hot glue modification appears to be what the seller disclosed. I would say this is a successful used camera inspection. It's not a full review. It's not even a first light verdict, but it's a successful acceptance test. And that's the point. I still buy used Astro cameras. Man, those savings are very real, but I only treat something like a deal after the seller proves that they have the gear, it behaves like it should, and the payment method doesn't remove every safety net. If you're new to the hobby, your safest used purchase is not going to be the cheapest listing. It's going to be the listing with the most proof, least pressure, and clearest paper trail. Next, assuming the sky eventually remembers that it's supposed to be transparent, I'll put this Minicam 8 under the stars to see what the data actually looks like. Because passing the desk test is one thing. Passing the sky test is where the gear really gets to earn its keep. Until then, I'm Francisco. This is Deep Sky Lab. No hype, just data. And someday, maybe we need to experiment with weather modification via Astro gear purchases. Clear skies.